Mande. Talar. Presta. Talar. ¿Sí? Talar. Construir, 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 construir. Servidora. Talar. Buscar. Presta. Construir. ¿Sí? Agora. Construir. ¿Mande? Servidora. Construir. Presta. ¿Sí? Construir. Servidora. Excavar. Construir. ¿Mande? Servidora. Plasme. ¿Sí? Buscar. Presta. ¿Mande? Buscar. Servidora. Buscar.
¿Mande?
Construir.
Presto. Construir.
¿Sí?
Servidor. Sí. Agora. Construir.
Wood, please. Wood, please.
¿Mande? Buscar. Buscar.
Servidor.
Construir. Presta. Construir.
Mande.
Construir. ¿Mande? Construir. Presta. De grado. Construir. 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 Voy. De grado.
Presto. Construir. Voy. Plazme. Sí. De grado. Construir.
Servidora. Plazme. Construir. ¿Sí? ¿Mande?
Servidor. Mande. Construir. Presto. Construir.
Servidora. Construir. Presta. Construir.
Sí. Mande.
Construir. Construir. ¿Sí? Presta.
Servidor. Plazme. Construir.
¿Sí? Construir. ¿Mande? ¿Servidora? ¿Sí? Presta. Voy.
Food, please.
Agora. ¿Servidora? Construir.
¿Sí? Voy. Construir. Presto. Agora. Construir.
¿Mande? De grado. Construir. Presta. Construir.
Mande. De grado. Construir. Servidor. Presto. Agora. Plazme.
Food, please.
De grado. Construir.
¿Sí? Excavar. Excavar.
¿Sí? Voy. Talar. Talar. Plazme. Talar. Construir. Talar. Construir. Presto. Agora. De grado. Voy. De grado, agora. Plazme, voy.
Gold, please.
Construir.
¿Mande? Construir.
Servidor. Excavar. Construir. Agora. Construir. Mande. Sí. Mande. Construir.
Servidora. Construir.
Gold, please.
Presto. De grado.
Presta.
Servidor. Presto.
Servidora. Construir. ¿Mande? Talar. ¿Sí? Talar. ¿Mande? Talar.
Sí. Construir.
¿Sí? Construir. 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 Presta. Construir. Servidora. Construir.
Servidor. Buscar. Mande. Presto. Buscar.
¿Mande? ¿Servidora? Construir. Presta.
Sí. Ahora. De grado.
¿Sí? Construir.
Mande. Voy. Sí. Ahora. Voy. De grado. Presto. A ellos.
Presta. Construir. ¿Servidora? Construir.
Sí.
Wood,
Construir.
please. Wood, please.
¿Mande? Plasme. Construir. Construir.
Mande. Buscar. Talar.
¿Sí? Construir. Construir. Talar, construir. Presta. Servidora. Voy. Agora. Mande. De grado. Plazo. Buscar. Construir.
Wood, please. Food, please. Wood, please.
¿Sí? Construir. ¿Mande? ¿Sí?
Presto. Servidor. Construir, ¿sí? Construir, presto. Mande. Construir, servidor. Construir,
Presta. Construir.
¿sí? Construir. Mande. Construir.
Servidora. Construir.
Servidor.
Construir. ¿Sí? Construir.
Wood, please. Wood, please.
Servidora.
Presto. Sí. De grado. Buscar. Cultivar. Presto. Cultivar. Mande. Cultivar. Sí.
Agora. Mande? Presta. Construir.
Servidor. Construir. Sí. Construir. Presto.
Voy.
Servidor. Mande.
Wood, please.
Sí.
Construir. Mande. Servidora.
Mande.
Wood, please. Wood, please.
Construir. Construir. Presta. Construir.
Presto.
Construir.
Servidor.
De grado. Agora. Voy. Construir. Plazme.
Presto. Construir. Servidor. Construir.
¿Sí? Construir.
Mande. Construir.
Wood, please.
Sí. Mande. Construir. 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 Presto. Construir. Servidor.
Plasma.
Sí.
Servidor.
Presto. Plasme. Voy. Sí.
Wood, please. Wood, please.
Construir. Construir. Servidor. Construir. Mande. Construir. De grado. Sí.
Construir.
Wood, please.
Construir.
Presto. Construir.
¿Mande? Sí, presta. Construir.
Mande. Construir. Servidor. Construir. Sí. Construir. Construir. Presto. Construir. Servidor. Construir. Mande. Presto. Mande.
Wood, please.
Talar. Sí. Talar.
Wood, please. Wood, please.
Servidor.
Construir. Construir. ¿Mande?
Construir.
Wood, please.
¿Sí? Talar.
Servidora.
Wood, please. Wood, please.
Construir. ¿Sí?
Presto. Construir. Servidor. Construir. Mande. Construir. ¿Sí? Mande. Plazme. Construir. Servidor. Voy. Construir.
Servidora. ¿Mande? Construir.
Wood, please.
Presta.
Construir. 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 Construir.
Wood, please.
Construir. 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 Construir.
Wood, please.
Presto. Agora. ¿Sí?
¿Sí?
Gold, please.
Construir. Presto. Construir. Mande. Presto. Santiago. ¿Sí? Guerra. De grado.
Mande? Agora.
Servidor. Plazme. Mande.
Wood, please.
Construir.
Wood, please.
¿Sí? Servidor.
Construir, 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 construir.
Wood, please. Gold, please.
Presto.
Wood, please.
Construir. Mande. Voy. Mande.
¿Sí?
Voy. Servidor. Mande. Talar. Presto. ¿Sí? Agora. Mande. Degrado.
Wood, please.
Voy. Agora.
Presto.
Construir.
please.
Presto. Construir. Sí.
Mande. Construir.
Servidor.
Presta. Quebrar. ¿Sí? Construir.
Sí.
Servidora.
Anuk men. Salam. Barur men. Evet. Ağaç kesermen. Buyruğunuz. Ağaç kesermen.
Anuk men. Evet. Ağaç kesermen. Salam. Kururnen. 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 Kururnen.
Salam. Çöplermen. Anukmen. Ağaç kesermen. Çöplermen. Çöplermen.
Evet.
Kururnen.
Evet. Gururmen.
Burganas.
Kururnen. Kururnen. Salam. Kururnen. Kururnen. Amukmen. Kururnen.
Evet.
Kururnen.
Buyruğunuz. Gururmen.
Burganas.
Alhaç kesermen.
Evet.
Wood, please.
Salam. Bieren çeyta. Kururnen. Çiplermen. Amukmen. Çiplermen.
Burganas.
Kururnen.
Anukmen. Evet. Ağaç kesermen. Evet.
Evet.
Çiplermen. Amukmen. Çiplermen. Salam.
Food, please.
Kururnen.
Buruhanas.
Kururnen.
Buyruğunuz. Anladım. Çüplermen. Çüplermen.
Amukmen.
Buruhanas.
Anladım. Kururnen.
Salam.
Wood, please.
Kururnen.
Evet.
Wood, please. Wood, please.
Salam. Bir çüplermen. Dermen. Kururmen. Anukmen.
Amukmen. Kururnen.
Buyruğunuz. Kururmen. Salam. Kururmen. Evet. Kururmen.
Evet.
Kururnen.
Buyruğunuz. Kururmen.
Salam.
Kururnen.
Buruhanas.
Kururnen. Amukmen. Kururnen.
Salam. Kururmen. Anukmen.
Kururnen. Kururnen.
Buruhanas.
Kururnen.
Evet. Anukmen. Kururmen. Kururmen. Kururmen.
Salam. Evet.
Wood, please.
Buru hanas. Salam.
Wood, please. Food, please.
Kururne. Evet. Kulu ketarne. Evet. Sola şurbis.
Guru Hanas.
Buru hanas. Evet.
Gurur men.
Wood, please. Wood, please. Wood, please.
Evet. Evet. Salam. Gurur men.
Anuk men.
¿Sí?
Ready. Greeton, chopper.
Grayton, correctus. Mandatum, chopper. Yay. Bulden.
Mandatum. Yay. Bolden, 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 Bolden.
Ready. Bulden. Grayton. Bulden. Ready. Gatherer. Gatherer. Mandatum. Bulden. Yay. Mandatum. Bulden. Bulden.
Greeten. Ik wil hem. Gatherer. Bolden. Bolden. Bolden.
Ready, gatherer. Bulden. Bulden. Yea, gatherer. Bulden. Grayton, Equilin. Bulden.
Yay. Chopper. Chopper.
Yay.
Wood,
Grayton.
please.
Chopper. Ready. Chopper. Mandatum. Dich.
Ready. Chopper. Mandatum. Chopper.
Ready. Chopper. Yay.
Bolden. Ready. Gatherer. Bolden.
Mandatum.
Mandatum. Bolden.
Grayton. Yay. Bulden. Yay.
Yay. Bolden.
Grayton. Yus. Bulden. Mandatum.
Greeton. Bolden.
Ready. Bulden. Mandatum. Bulden. Grayton. Bulden. Ready. Bulden.
Yay. Bolden.
Yay. Bulden. Equilin. Chopper. Ready. Yay. Bulden. Yay. Chopper. Bulden. Mandatum. Chopper. Bulden. Grayton. Yus. Bulden. Ready. Chopper. Bulden.
Ready. Chopper. Bolden.
Yay. Chopper. Bulden.
Mandatum. Chopper. Bolden. Yay.
Food, please.
Grayton. Mandatum. Correctus. Bulden.
Greeton.
Bulden. Chopper. Bulden. Ready. Chopper. Dich. Mandatum.
Mandatum. Ready. Chopper. Bolden.
Yay. Yus. Dich.
Yay. Ready. Mandatum. Greeton. Chopper. Ready. Mandaten just. Golden. Greeting. Yay.
Gold, please.
Golden.
Wood, please. Wood, please. please?
Hey everyone, it's the Viper here and welcome to another video. In today's video I'm going to be sharing some tips and features that might help you improve at the game. It can be anything from the most simple carrying any resource. You can drop it off by constructing an economic building. For example, if you carry gold, you can add it to your stockpile by finishing the construction of a mill. The same works for every resource with a mill. If your villager is carrying any resource, you can drop it off by constructing an economic building. For example, if you carry gold, you can add it to your stockpile by finishing the construction of a mill. The same works for every resource with a mill, mining camp, lumber camp, town center, and even a farm. One of the most useful hotkeys is the idle villager keybind. Keeping your economy running is crucial, so make sure you have this as an efficient hotkey. You can create control groups by selecting a unit, holding control and clicking a number. This will allow you to jump to and take control of your units without having to select them with your mouse. As you enter later stages of the games, natural gold will eventually run out, and you can therefore just select a unit, holding control key. You can create control groups by selecting a unit, holding control and clicking a number. This will allow you to jump to and take control of your units without having to select them with your mouse. As you enter later stages of the games, natural gold will eventually run out, and you can therefore generate gold with trade cards from a market or trade cogs from the dock. You have to send the unit to an ally market or allied dock. The longer the distance, the more gold is generated, and make sure to research Caravan for extra speed on the trade cart. There is never a right or wrong time to start trading, but I would generally recommend you to start trading early in Imperial Age. Economic upgrades are very important. Priority order of economy upgrades are in most cases wood, food, gold, and stone. Even the second wood upgrade is often done before any of the gold and stone upgrades, particularly in booming scenarios. Wheelbarrow and handcart are crucial technologies as well, but see the most significant boost in farming efficiency, so you want to have a lot of farms running before it's worth investing into these. If you don't see a timer during the game on the top of the screen, hit F11 and it will show up. The in-game time is about 1.7 times faster than actual time. If you're playing a team game, you can add a star at the beginning of your message to make your message visible to everyone. With a hashtag, the message will only be seen by enemies, and a semicolon will only show it to your allies. If you have military units selected and hold Alt while right-clicking, you will ignore enemy buildings, and that makes it easier to target the unit you're after if it's hidden behind buildings. If you have military units selected and hold Alt while right-clicking, you will ignore enemy buildings, and that makes it easier to target the unit you're after if it's hidden behind or close to a structure or maybe on top of a farm. If you want to lure a deer, the same thing works regarding Gaia units. Holding Alt will make you not attack, making it easy to lure a deer with a military unit that would normally attack it on right-click. If herdable animals are killed by military units or buildings, they will give you 0 food. The killing blow has to be dealt by villagers in order to be able to collect any food. Upon advancing to the feudal age, a scout cavalry will receive 2 additional line of sight, 2 extra attack, and also move faster. Line of sight is also increased by 2 in the Castle Age and in the Imperial Age as well. Upon reaching the Castle Age, the training time of Eagle Scouts reduces from 60 to 35 seconds. They also gain +3 attack and bonus damage in forms of +2 attack versus cavalry and +1 attack versus camels and ships. Team bonuses also apply to yourself, meaning your team bonus can still be very helpful in 1v1 games. Your civilization bonus also applies to the units that are available to you through a team bonus. For example, Imperial skirmishers will be cheaper for the Byzantines, and Malian's condottiero will have extra pierce armor, and so on. The time it takes for a monk to convert a unit can be 5 to 14 in-game seconds without any resistance bonuses or techs. Some units, such as the Scout Cavalry and Eagle Warrior, have extra resistance to conversions, making them more likely to take longer, but there is still a small chance for a quick conversion. Monks are definitely RNG based. Monks have a short delay between when they start converting and when the conversion can first occur. However, they can still switch targets while converting without resetting this timer. In the monastery, you can find 2 techs that can help versus conversions. Faith increases the average time it takes to convert your units, and Heresy makes the converted units die instead of switching sides to the enemy. In a recent patch, the Sicilians' First Crusade technology also has started giving some conversion resistance, equaling to the Faith technology in the monastery. Monks can heal farms and fish traps. Yes. Villagers can steal enemy farms, and fishing ships can steal enemy fish traps. The food resets upon the completion of the steal, which is done by simply tasking your villager to the enemy farm or fishing ship to the enemy fish trap. Efficient hotkeys are very important to speed up the game. I pointed out the idle villager hotkey earlier, and you should try your best to make every hotkey as quick and efficient to click as possible. If you have the global queue activated and visible on your screen, you can cancel units or researchers by holding Ctrl and left-clicking the icon in the global queue. Repairing a building requires half the original cost of the building to repair from 1 HP to full HP. Town centers, however, require twice their wood cost, amounting to 550 wood. Repairing a town center does not cost stone, but you need to have at least 1 stone in your stockpile to be able to repair the town center. In fact, the game shows rounded resources, meaning you could have 0.1 stone, C0, and still be able to repair. The organ gun is the only unique unit that requires redemption to be converted. Ballista elephants also count as siege, but do not require redemption. Aztecs, Incas, and Mayans can train axolotl warriors if they have a stable. The unit has the same stats as a knight, but one cannot research the blacksmith armor upgrades for cavalry. Mayans, however, do not have redemption, so the only way they can ever get a stable is by starting with it in, for example, Mega Random or a custom scenario. Infantry can garrison inside rams, and doing so increases the rams' speed and attack against buildings. Siege towers also move faster with infantry garrisoned. Archers and villagers can also garrison inside of these, but do not increase the attack nor the movement speed. Upon building a market, you will get the vision of all your allies. In the past, there was a research called cartography that you had to research for allied vision at the cost of 100 food and 100 gold. The war galley technology you can research in the castle age in the dock upgrades not just galleys, but also fire galleys and demolition rafts. Fire ships, demolition ships, cannon galleons, and unique unit ships are located on the inside Khmer houses. However, compared to a town center, castle, or tower, you do not regenerate HP inside a house. That was 30 quick tips and tricks about Age of Empires 2. Hopefully you learned a thing or two that can be applied.
We're going to do an Age of Empires 2 beginner's guide with really having this be a guide dedicated to people who have never played Age of Empires before. I'm Andy the Dork. I'm joined by Gus the Bus and Poppin' Jimbo. And what the point of this is Jimbo has played a lot of Age of Empires 2. Gus and I played a lot of Age of Empires 4, but we want to ask Jimbo, the professional here, general questions of Age of Empires. So Jimbo, how would you describe Age of Empires to someone who's never played it ever before?
I describe it as a strategy game where you look at your units up from the top, you manage your economy, and build some military buildings to destroy your enemy.
It's one of those games I think is easy to pick up and play.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty straightforward RTS, like any...
There are 2 key units in Age of Empires. They are split up between economic units, your villagers and your traders, and your military units. Jimbo, how do you build units in Age of Empires, both military and economy units?
So basically, at the start of the game, meaning Dark Age, early feudal, you only want to be making villagers, so you can build your economy and advance through the ages. And once you get to the castle age, it gets spicy. You start making your knights, your crossbows, maybe your monks if you want, and your siege. And then the game evolves later down the line until the Imperial Age, where you have your maxed up army with trebs and unique units.
Yeah, so I think it can be overwhelming for new players because when you first load it up, there's like, what, 42 civs?
Yeah, and especially because it's like you get in there and you just launch the game and you're like, what do I even do? Where do I even start? And really what you're going to want to do is you're going to have one building at the start, your town center, and you're going to have a handful of villagers. And you're going to take those villagers and you're going to want to start gathering food. Typically there's going to be some kind of animal near your TC, so you can just start getting sheep. And then you're going to click on that town center and you're going to have an option to then produce more villagers from, which later on you'll be able to build more town centers. But that really is the key route to the game, is consistently making villagers from your town center.
And the premise of Age of Empires is in the name, Age. You advance through these ages, and that unlocks the ability to build new buildings that produce newer units, and you can buy upgrades. How do you age up in Age of Empires 2, Jimbo?
As opposed to Age of Empires 4, that you build landmarks. In Age of Empires 2, you go through the ages with your TC. You need some prerequisites from buildings. You need 2 buildings from each age. Unless you're in the castle age going to Imperial, you just need a castle.
Yeah, so if you go on your town center, there'll be a button that will say advance to the next age. It'll tell
Age of Empires 2 has grown a lot over the past 20 years. Experts, intermediate players, low elo legends, and even boar lamers make up the community. These days, many of the experts stream their gameplay, which allows lower level players to improve at a much faster rate. No matter your ranking, there's one thing that connects us all: the desire for competition. This desire constantly pushes us to improve in order to get those sweet, sweet wins. The satisfaction of seeing quantifiable improvement is hard to come by in everyday life. One of the best ways to improve, using hotkeys for common units and technologies, including action, we have fundamentals. This includes following a standard opening, understanding what each of the 4 resources are used for, basic scouting of resources in your base, boar luring, walling your base, using hotkeys for common units and technologies, including adding custom hotkeys, understanding basic unit counters, and using a control group for your scout. Once you have the fundamentals down, you should work on your macro. This covers constantly building villagers, not getting housed, using wood as it comes in, keeping military production constantly producing when necessary, minimizing idle time, adding town centers in early castle age, and adding production facilities to match your economy. Macro is not something that's easy to master, and is something that can always be improved at any level. The first 2 categories can be improved on without paying any attention to what your opponent is doing. Once you have the fundamentals and macro at a decent level, you can start focusing on more overall strategy. This means you need to know the civ matchups, be able to follow a standard build order, and adapt to the current state of the game. You also need to be able to scout properly and use the information that you get from scouting to inform your decisions. Understanding map control also helps a lot. Once I get into the details, you'll notice that scouting is very important at this phase. At lower levels, scouting is not as important as you won't be processing as much of the information that you get from scouting, since you're thinking about more important things at the time, like producing villagers and houses. But once you get to a higher level, you'll start to use every bit of information you can get. And finally, once you've got a pretty good grasp of the game, it's time for the cherry on top: micro. This allows you to more effectively use your units. This includes controlling villagers and military. Since villagers can build building foundations to block units from moving, there's a lot of fancy micro that you can do with them. Pretty much every unit is micro differently, so there's a lot to cover in this section. I'll go over the more common units to micro later on. Keep in mind that even though micro is flashy and fun to do, if you sacrifice your macro for it, it's often not worth it. Alright, before we get into the meat of things, I just want to clarify, this is not a step-by-step tutorial of the order in which you should learn things, but rather a checklist of what you can work on to help you reach the next level. It just means that when you're losing games, you should have a closer look at your macro before blaming your strategy choice. Anyways, there's many ways to get good at AoE, so let's go over a few of them. The first thing you should do when getting into a game with most civs is queue up villagers. Then, build a house with 2 villagers and another with the other one. Make sure to use 2 villagers that are close together to build the first house, and place it between them. You have to be pretty quick about this, since villagers and houses both take 25 seconds to build. When 2 villagers build a house, it only takes 19 seconds, so you have 6 seconds to start building the house with 2 villagers, after you queue up your villagers. Next, send a sheep under your town center. If you don't see your sheep, send your scout as well as a villager to find them. If you see your sheep but don't have them converted, send your scout directly there. Once a sheep is going underneath your town center, select your villagers and shift queue them to the sheep. This way they'll go directly to the sheep without any downtime. On standard maps like Arabia, directly there. Once a sheep is going underneath your town center, select your villagers and shift queue them to the sheep. This way they'll go directly to the sheep without any downtime. On standard maps like Arabia, the next step is to find your additional herdables and 2 boars. The additional herdables can be either 3 cows or 4 sheep, or the equivalent big herdable and small herdable. Let's talk a bit about each of the 4 resources. Food is the most important resource early on, as it's used to create villagers and advance to the next age. It can be gained in many different ways, each with varying gather rates. The most important thing to keep in mind is that hunters work faster than shepherds, farmers, and foragers, so it's really important to bring in your boars. I made an app on Heroku that has all of the gather rates listed for each resource if you're interested in more details. In addition to villagers and age-ups, food is used for all barracks and stable units, and most technologies. This means that if you want to build infantry or cavalry, you're going to need to structure your economy around gathering food. This means that you have to add lots of farms, but the exact number of farms depends on what units you're trying to build. Again, check out my Heroku app to see the exact numbers. Okay, next up is wood. Wood is most importantly used to build buildings. It's also used as the main resource when building siege, and usually the secondary resource when building archery range units. Wood income is tied to food income in that it costs wood to build farms, so once you've depleted all your berries and animals, you must have wood income in order to maintain food income. It takes 1 Dark Age lumberjack to pay for constant reseeding of 3 Dark Age farms. This means that in the time it takes 3 farmers to deplete 3 farms with 175 starting food, 1 lumberjack collects 180 wood to reseed the farms. This improves drastically with upgrades. For example, with 2-man saw and crop rotation, 1 villager that's chopping wood can maintain 13 farms. Usually you have your rally point from your town center set to wood, so you usually don't really have to think. Farms with 175 starting food, 1 lumberjack collects 180 wood to reseed the farms. This improves drastically with upgrades. For example, with 2-man saw and crop rotation, 1 villager that's chopping wood can maintain 13 farms. Usually you have your rally point from your town center set to wood, so you usually don't really have to think too hard about collecting it. And finally we have gold and stone. Gold is used for generally stronger units such as the archer and knight, and stone is used for defensive structures like the castle and town center. You usually don't have to take either of these resources in the Dark Age, but you do need to collect 200 gold in order to advance to the Castle Age. It's really important to know how many villagers to put on gold to maintain unit production, so that you don't end up having too much or too little gold. For example, you need 4 on gold to make archers constantly, and 7 to make knights. The important thing about stone is that you need 100 per town center, and it's pretty standard to go 3 town centers in Castle Age. You start with 200, so you usually don't have to mine stone until you want a castle, but if you build a tower or outpost early, then you'll have to collect stone early as well. Though I mentioned earlier that scouting is not the most important thing at lower levels, it's still essential to find key resources in your base. Different maps have different resource distributions, and I'll be using Arabia as the standard for what you should look for. The most important resources to scout right away are hurdles and boars and a woodline. For the woodline, you usually want to take one in the back of your base so it's easier to defend. On Arabia, different types of herdable animals can spawn. There are 3 different sets that are possible. It could be 8 small animals, 4 small animals and 3 big animals, or 6 big animals. There will always be a large group close to your town center, and 2 smaller groups a bit further away. You also get either 2 wild boars or 1 rhinoceros and 1 elephant. Once you find your sheep and boars, you'll want to find your gold mines. You should have a main gold that has 7 tiles, and 2 secondary golds with 4 tiles each. Usually you'll want to mine your main gold first as it'll last longer, and you can get more villagers working efficiently on it. But sometimes you should take a secondary gold first if it's in the back of your base, further from your opponent. You should also have a herd of either 3 or 4 deer, or equivalent small huntable animal. A higher level technique is to push the deer to your town center with your scout, but usually you'll place a mill next to them to take them. If the deer are too close to your opponent, you may want to skip taking them, as it may put your villagers in danger. The final resource you should look for is stone. You should have a main stone with 5 tiles and a secondary stone with 4 tiles. Don't worry if you can't find all of your golden stone mines right away. As long as you know the location of one of them, you'll be fine. The last thing in the fundamentals section that you need to scout is the location of your opponent's base. This will allow you to know where to send your units when you want to attack, as well as where the enemy will probably come from to attack you. Once you've scouted the essentials, you can safely put your scout on auto scout to scout the rest of the map. Of course, there are other things you could be scouting, but we'll cover them in the strategy section. Next up, let's learn how to lure boars. There are a few ways to do this. The most basic is to shoot the boar with a villager once, and then run back under the town center. Be careful not to task the villager to a resource, as this makes the villager attack the boar when the boar tries to eat him. Once the boar is underneath the town center, shoot it with all other villagers that are there. You may need to garrison the luring villager so he doesn't die. The second way to lure is to shoot it with the town center. This is my preferred way of doing it, as it reduces idle time and saves villager HP. The risk of doing it this way is that if you kill the boar with the town center, the meat will disappear. You can reduce the chances of this happening by understanding a few things. When villagers shoot the boar, they only do 3 damage per hit, whereas an arrow fired from the town center does 5. Boars have 75 HP, so if you shoot it once with the luring villager, you can garrison 7 villagers and shoot it twice to get it to 2 HP. If you accidentally shoot it twice with the lure, however, you'll kill the boar this way. It's best to garrison 6, but you can also garrison 3 or 4 villagers to shoot the boar. With 6 villagers garrisoned, shoot the boar twice. With 4, shoot it 3 times, and with 3, shoot it 4 times. Once the boar is weakened, use the set rally hotkey and right-click the boar, and then ungarrison to finish it off. A useful idea to keep in mind is that you can block the boar with your scout when luring from a long distance. This will allow you to take less damage from the boar. There's another way to lure the boar, and that's with the scout. With the scout, you have to hit the boar twice in order to make it chase you. This is mainly used to steal an opponent's boar, or on an island's map where you don't really care about your scout's HP. You have to make sure that your scout stays within the line of sight of the boar, otherwise it'll run back to its starting position. The boar's line of sight is 3, while most scouts have 4 line of sight. If an opponent is laming your boar, there's a couple of ways to stop it. You have to use your scout to either block the boar from chasing and hope that your opponent leaves its line of sight, or you have to block the opponent's scout so that it gets eaten by the boar. Either way, you need to be able to click back and forth really fast in order to pull these tricks off. If you've ever been attacked by archers or scouts, you'll know how important walling can be to prevent the opponent from doing too much damage. The way that you decide to wall your map comes down to many factors such as map layout, civilization choices, and strategy. There are a few things to keep in mind when you're walling. Make sure that your base isn't too small. If your base is too small, archers will still be able to shoot your villagers over the walls, and you'll have a hard time expanding later on. Make sure your walls aren't too far away. If your walls are too far away, you'll have trouble repairing them or making another layer behind since your villagers will be nowhere near them. Also, you risk losing your walling villager to the enemy scout and militia, or wolves. Try to incorporate buildings that are not palisade or stone walls into your wall. Since you need to build other buildings anyways, you might as well build them as part of your wall so you can save resources, as well as strengthen the wall. This can be a good way to add extra houses so you don't forget, though at higher levels you can't really afford to build extra houses early. Usually you don't need stone walls. Stone walls cost more and take longer to build than palisade walls. It's better to have a palisade wall that's finished than a stone wall that's only half done. Stonewalling when you're up against Eagle Warriors or Siege, however, or when you're going for extra town centers with no military can sometimes be effective. If you can wall to the edge of the map, it's usually best to do so. Walling to the edge of the map makes it so that the enemy can't get behind your base, which means that they can't fully surround you. It also reduces the enemy army's mobility, which means that they have to walk the long way around to get to the other side of your base. If you do it this way, you'll usually end up having to build less walls as well, so you'll save resources there. Be careful when placing gates. Not only do they allow for more melee units to attack them at once, they also only have 2 pierce armor, compared with 5 pierce armor from palisade walls. This means that archers will be able to easily get through them, whereas it takes a really long time for archers to get through palisade walls. Usually a single gate at the front of your base is all you'll want. When leaving your base from other sides, it's often better to just delete a section of wall and then rebuild it behind once the units are through. There are probably more tips on walling that I could think of, but we'll leave it at that for now. You'll notice when higher level players play, they do things so quickly that you can't actually explain in real time exactly what they're doing. The way that they do this is by utilizing many different hotkeys. Let's take a look at the difference between using hotkeys and not. On top, I'm using only the mouse to play, whereas on the bottom I'm using both the mouse and keyboard. The actions that I do in the game are exactly the same, but you'll see with hotkeys, everything is much faster. My point is that learning hotkeys is a requirement if you want to get faster at playing. Being able to do things faster will allow you to do more fun things as well, like microing your units. With hotkeys, you don't have to learn them all at once. For example, if you're going archers one game, force yourself to always use the archer hotkey to build archers instead of clicking them. At first this will be slower than clicking, but with a bit of practice you'll develop muscle memory, which will make it much faster. I'll just real quickly show a few important changes to my hotkey setup that I've made. I mostly use the default ones, but there are a few differences. I set my garrison hotkey to E. It's much easier to press and it's really important to be able to do this quickly and accurately, as it's often the difference between losing a unit and not. Set rally is changed from T to Q. Again, it's just a bit easier to press accurately. In game commands, there are hotkeys for selecting all of a certain building. You'll want to use this most of the time when selecting military buildings. These are preset to the fairly inaccessible hotkey of Control plus Shift plus another key. I've just set these to a single button. There's a related button which centers the camera on a specific building. This one's useful for when you need to go to that building to set rally points individually, or cancel units that you accidentally queued up. I have this hotkey set to Control plus whatever hotkey I have set for the select all of that building. For example, I have select all archery ranges on T, and then go to archery range on Control plus T. Doing it this way basically means that you can learn 2 hotkeys in one. There's one more hotkey idea that I want to select all archery ranges on T, and then go to archery range on Control plus T. Doing it this way basically means that you can learn 2 hotkeys in one. There's one more hotkey idea that I want to show you here. I have go to lumber camp on Control and Z. Then I set the wood upgrades to Z. Then I can quickly press Control Z and then just Z to research the wood upgrade. Seeing as you should be getting the wood upgrades as soon as you reach the next age most of the time, it's worth it to set this. I do the same for mill, but use X as the hotkey. As with most questions in Age of Empires 2, they can be answered with a simple "it depends." When it comes to unit counters, a lot of the time who wins the battle depends on positioning and micro. For example, knights counter archers in an open plain, but archers can beat knights in a small choke point. I'm not going to go over every unit counter in the game, as that would take hours, but there are a few basic unit counters that you should know about that are usually true. The Spearman line does a ton of bonus damage against cavalry, but they also take a bunch of bonus damage from ranged units. Because of this, they're good at fighting non-ranged cavalry. Even if they don't win one-on-one with heavy cavalry, since pikemen are so cheap they trade cost-effectively with knights. This means that if you fight with equal resources invested into both armies, the pikemen will win. Archers are good against infantry with low pierce armor, such as men-at-arms and pikemen. They're also really great at picking off villagers. Skirmishers do very well against archers and cavalry archers due to their high pierce armor and bonus damage against them. Melee cavalry units are very good against skirmishers in siege due to the minimum range of these units and the cavalry's ability to close the distance fast. Siege units such as the Mangonel and Scorpion are good against tightly packed units since they deal area of effect damage. This means they can take down large groups of ranged units effectively. Monks convert knights faster than other units, so it can be a good idea to have a few monks if you're up against a bunch of knights. To counter monks, you'll want light cavalry or eagle warriors, as these units resist conversion and have an attack bonus against monks. Anyways, these unit counters are just a brief overview for now, and probably deserve their own video one day. The final thing I wanted to talk about as something fundamental that you should do is put your scout in a control group. This will allow you to press that number to select your scout. If you control group your scout, you'll probably remember to use it more, which becomes very important as you get better at the game. In the next video, I'll be covering macro. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there. Alrighty, we've made it to the macro section, and we're starting it off with the most important bit of advice that you can get: constantly building villagers. The reason that you should be constantly building villagers is that the more resources you have coming in, the more military you can eventually get. Ideally, you keep all town centers running at all times until you reach around 100 to 140 villagers. There are a few viable strategies that rely on stopping villager production early, but chances are if your TC isn't working, you're just being inefficient. One common reason to stop villager production temporarily is when you need to get an important tech. The more resources you have coming in, the more military you can eventually get. Ideally, you keep all town centers running at all times until you reach around 100 to 140 villagers. There are a few viable strategies that rely on stopping villager production early, but chances are if your TC isn't working, you're just being inefficient. One common reason to stop villager production temporarily is when you need to get an important technology quickly, such as Imperial Age. You need around 6.25 farms to maintain villager production per town center. This is without wheelbarrow, and once you get wheelbarrow, it's a little bit less. The best thing that you can do to remind yourself to create villagers is to use the Select All Town Centers hotkey, and pay close attention to the unit queues. In the end, it just takes practice to remember to queue villagers. This sort of ties in with constantly building villagers, not getting housed. It's very common at all levels to be forced to delay production because you need to build houses. I have a few pieces of advice to help you not get housed. In the early game, you need to understand that houses take 25 seconds to build, which is the same time it takes to train a villager. This means that as long as you start building a house while you have 2 free population space, you won't get housed. For example, if you're at 13 out of 15 population, you can start your house anytime before you reach 14 out of 15 population. Now, even if you fully understand this, sometimes you just forget. You might look at your population and see 14 out of 15, and you don't have a house on the way. In this case, you have 2 options. Get loom while you build a house with 1 villager, or use multiple villagers to build the house that you need. Using multiple villagers to build things works like this. The first villager builds at 100% efficiency, so if the house has a construction time of 25 seconds, 1 villager will build it in 25 seconds. Each additional villager adds 33% to the efficiency number. With 2 villagers, the house will be built in 19 seconds. With 4 villagers, we're at 200% efficiency, so the house is built in 12.5 seconds, which is half of the original build time. You can figure out how long it'll take to build something with this formula displayed on screen. We can therefore conclude that using less villagers to build things is more efficient when it comes to villager work time. This is easily illustrated when looking at building a market, which has a 60-second build time. With 4 vills, it takes 30 seconds, and with 7, it takes 20 seconds. The only time you should use multiple villagers to build something is when you need to sacrifice efficiency for speed. If you build houses as part of your wall, you'll get housed less. Of course, this costs more wood, but it's often worth it so you don't delay villager production, and it also strengthens your wall. When you look at how many resources you have, which should be very often, make sure to also check your population. If you're getting your extra production buildings when going to Imp, make sure to build extra houses as well. If you have a forward villager that's built a siege workshop, you can have him building houses on the front, instead of sending him home. This allows you to repair siege as well. If you're on 3 town centers, you should have 1 villager constantly building houses. This villager should probably build them as part of a center. When you look at how many resources you have, which should be very often, make sure to also check your population. If you're getting your extra production buildings when going to Imp, make sure to build extra houses as well. If you have a forward villager that's built a siege workshop, you can have him building houses on the front, instead of sending him home. This allows you to repair siege as well. If you're on 3 town centers, you should have 1 villager constantly building houses. This villager should probably build them as part of a longer wall at the back of your base if you have a fairly open map. Or, if you just don't want to think about houses, play Huns. If you've ever followed a build order, you've probably come across the idea of building a farm as soon as you reach 60 wood. This is because wood is the limiting factor when trying to expand your economy. The easiest way to think about managing your economy is to always have a plan for what to do with your wood. In this example, we'll be assuming that you don't have to react to any aggression from the opponent for a while. Say that you want to go 3 TC boom. You have 7 farms, and you get 2 additional town centers in Bosaw as soon as you reach Castle Age. You know that you need 19 farms to support 3 TC villager production, so your first priority for spending wood is on farms up to 19. It's always good to have a bit extra on food so you can afford upgrades, so you decide to go up to 21 farms. Once you have 21 farms, the food that you've started to float goes into wheelbarrow. Once wheelbarrow is complete, you only need 17 farms for your 3 TCs, which means you'll be floating a lot of extra food. The plan next is to go knights, so you get 2 stables with your wood after spending on wheelbarrow. Wheelbarrow is complete, you only need 17 farms for your 3 TCs, which means you'll be floating a lot of extra food. The plan next is to go knights, so you get 2 stables with your wood after spending on wheelbarrow. To support 2 stables, you need about 12 farmers with wheelbarrow. Goes into wheelbarrow. Once wheelbarrow is complete, you only need 17 farms for your 3 TCs, which means you'll be floating a lot of extra food. The plan next is to go knights, so you get 2 stables with your wood after spending on wheelbarrow. To support 2 stables, you need about 12 farmers with wheelbarrow and 14 gold miners. After you get the stables, you'll want to spend for spending wood is on farms up to 19. It's always good to have a bit extra on food so you can afford upgrades, so you decide to go up to 21 farms. Once you have 21 farms, the food that you've started to float goes into wheelbarrow. Once wheelbarrow is complete, you only need 17 farms for your 3 TC, which means you'll be floating a lot of extra food. The plan next is to go knights, so you get 2 stables with your wood after spending on wheelbarrow. To support 2 stables, levels, you need about 12 farmers with wheelbarrow and 14 gold miners. After you get the stables, you'll want to spend wood on getting up to at least 29 farms to build 3 villagers and 2 knights at a time. Since knights require 7 on gold per 29 farms to build 3 villagers and 2 knights at a time. Since knights require 7 on gold per stable, 9 farms to build 3 villagers and 2 knights at a time. Since knights require 7 on gold per stable, you'll want 1 more mining camp on a second gold mine and 7 villagers on each mine. Per stable, you'll want 1 more mining camp on a second knights at a time. Since knights require 7 on gold per stable, you'll want 1 more mining villagers and 2 knights at a time. Since knights require 7 on gold per stable, you'll want 1 more mining camp on a second gold mine and 7 villagers on each mine. Once your food and gold's sufficient, you'll want to spend your wood on the next plan. If you want to go to the Imperial Age, make more farms. If you want to go for an attack, build a siege workshop and siege. If you want to collect relics, build a monastery. There are so many things that you can decide to do, and it all comes down to the order in which you spend your wood. If you're floating a lot of wood, this could mean that you don't have a clear strategy in mind. I'll expand a bit more on this topic in the strategy section later. In addition to villager production, if you're going for an attack, you need to be able to produce military units constantly as well. This means that you need to balance your economy around what units you'll be building, as well as actually build the villager production. If you're going for an attack, you need to be able to produce military units constantly as well. This means that you need to balance your economy around what units you'll be building, as well as actually build the units themselves. Every unit has a different resource cost as well as creation time, so how you balance your economy is different depending on what combination of units you're going to be creating. The actual numbers that you need on each resource should be learned before you even get into the game, so it's one less thing to think about when playing. Again, check out my Heroku app for this. In-game, to keep military producing constantly, you'll have to really know your hotkeys. Instead of scrolling to your production facilities, clicking them, and then queuing units, you have to get used to using the Select All hotkey. This allows you to queue units without moving the camera, which allows you to watch important battles more closely. The Select All hotkey isn't always the best solution, as sometimes you have production buildings that aren't part of your main production, like sneak stables in the late game. If you don't want to have those sneak stables in the selection, you'll have to just put your main production in a control group, and select from there. You'll want to add main production buildings to your control group from the start of the game if you want to do it this way, as you won't have much time to do this all at once later on. You should pay close attention to the global production queue when trying to constantly build multiple types of units. This will allow you to see when a unit is almost built so you can go queue another one. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you're constantly building military, you're going to need to be constantly building houses as well. I've created this exercise for training hotkeys, which should allow you to keep production running much more smoothly. Go into the scenario editor and create an empty map. Set the age to post-imp and give yourself maximum resources. Add the production buildings that you want to work on, and add a trigger that sets the population to max. The goal is to keep every building running at all times, and have a maximum of 2 units queued in each building. You should also not touch the mouse at all. In this example, I have 4 stables, 1 monastery, 2 siege workshops, and 3 town centers running. If you try this, you'll find that you get faster as you learn your hotkeys. This kind of custom scenario where you work on one aspect of the game without the pressure of an actual opponent can be very example in each building. To keep every building running at all times and have them set after the scenario editor and create an empty map. Set the age to post-imp and give yourself maximum resources. add the production buildings that you want to work on, and add a trigger that sets the population to max. The goal is to keep every building running at all times and have a maximum of 2 units queued in each building. You should also not touch the mouse at all. In this example, I have 4 stables, 1 monastery, 2 siege workshops, and 3 town centers running. If you try this, you'll find that you get faster as you learn your hotkeys. This kind of custom scenario where you work on one aspect of the game without the pressure of an actual opponent can be very useful. It's kind of like playing the piano. If you've learned improper fingerings for a certain section, you won't magically use the correct fingerings when you go to give a performance. You need to go back and relearn the correct fingerings slowly during your solo practice before performing. It's the same for using hotkeys. If you've only ever clicked units to build them, you'll find it difficult to get out of the habit while laddering unless you focus on them slowly during practice. Don't worry about the speed at first. If you can do it slowly, you'll eventually be able to do it fast. Proper technique is what matters most. No matter how many villagers you have, if a bunch of them are idle, your economy is not as good as you think. You can think of idle villagers in terms of resources lost. For example, when you garrison 7 villagers to shoot an opponent's scout, each shot that you fire takes 2 seconds, so that's 14 seconds of idle time per shot. This means that the cost of each shot is around 6 food. If you try to shoot the scout 3 times, that's 6 seconds in the garrison 7 villagers to shoot an opponent's scout. Each shot that you fire takes 2 seconds, so that's 14 seconds of idle time per shot. This means that the cost of each shot is around 6 food. If you try to shoot the scout 3 times, that's 6 seconds in the town center and about 3 seconds to get the villagers back to collecting food. This works out to about 26 food. If the angle of the enemy scout is such that you probably won't get a good hit off, it's best to not even try. The most common reason for an idle villager early on is when a villager finishes a section of wall. This is mainly due to the fact that you usually won't shift queue them back to work because of the way dragged wall sections work. In order to make shift queues work for this, you have to individually click each wall piece in order with perfect accuracy. This can be viable for short sections of walls, but it's more trouble than it's worth for longer sections. Another thing to watch out for is when you send a villager in a hole and then build a camp which traps them in there. Depending on the position of the camp, the villager may go idle for seemingly no reason. This is due to the way pathfinding for villager works. I won't get into more specific detail because I myself am not an expert on the topic, but if you always remember to shift queue the villagers that you put in the hole to the resource, you won't have any issues. The last really common reason to have a bunch of idols that I'll go over is when you have to garrison villagers against enemy raids. In this case, it's easy to forget about your villagers, as you're probably sending army to deal with the raids, as well as a million other things, but try to keep in mind that 15 idle villagers cost you around 6 resources per second that they're in the town center. So much for arrows not costing anything in this game. Once it's safe to do so, you really want to get your villagers back to work. One of my favorite strategies is to run elite skirmishers under enemy town centers to idle it and pick off villagers. Let's look at a quick demonstration of this in action. For this demonstration, I'll assume the 15 villagers in the town center were 10 lumberjacks and 5 farmers with wheelbarrow. I have 16 elite skirmishers with ballistics and bodkin arrow, which is enough to consistently one-shot villagers when accounting for their 90% accuracy. The skirmishers cost 304 food and 432 wood, since I'm playing as Byzantines, who get a discount. Let's convert the food and wood costs over to generic resources so that we can determine how many seconds of idle time the 16 skirmishers are worth. The skirmishers are worth 736 resources, and the idle villagers are worth around 7.75 resources per second. This means that if the 15 villagers are idle for 95 seconds, the skirmishers' cost has been paid for. Without any military support, the town center takes 168 seconds to kill all of the skirmishers. When the town center has one more attack upgrade compared with the skirmishers' defense upgrades, the time taken is halved down to 84 seconds. If you factor in a couple of villager pickoffs, you don't even need to get close to 95 seconds to make it worth it. I think you can start to see how deadly idle time can be. So, what are some ways to reduce idle time? The most important thing is to press the go-to idle villager hotkey. It's preset to period, but you can set it to whatever you'd like. Basically, you should get in the habit of just pressing this key a lot. Even if you don't think you have any idols, you may be surprised. You can actually see if you have idols in the top of your screen, but if you think of looking there as an action, you still have to press the idle villager button and then go to the idol. This means that you make 2 actions, where you really only have to do the one action of pressing the idle villager button. If you press the button and you don't have any idols, then you'll hear a noise signifying this. It just comes down to pressing the button being faster than focusing your eyes on a certain part of the screen. 300 key presses per minute is achievable, whereas focusing your vision 300 times in a minute is not. In addition to the Go To idle hotkey, there's also a Select All idles hotkey. This is preset to Shift plus period. This allows you to select all idols that are not garrisoned in buildings. It's really useful if you want to fix your idols really fast and you don't care if you send them all to the same place. The best way to fix farmers whose farm is expired is to press the idle villager button and center your cursor in the middle of the screen. Then you just need to right click to reseed the farm. Getting into the habit of always shift queuing your builders to the next action, as well as pressing the idle villager hotkey more frequently, should help to reduce idle time. One of the most common reasons to rush to Castle Age is to add more town centers to expand your economy much faster than you could in Dark or Feudal Age. Adding town centers not only allows you to build more villagers, it also allows you to move your villagers to resources that would be unsafe to take without the protection of the town center. Choosing the locations of your new town center is vital, as these are the only defensive buildings you'll want to build until you get a castle. This is one of the reasons why map control is so important. It allows you to safely build your town centers in just the right locations. I'll get into map control later, but for now, just know that it means that you can move your units around the map without worrying too much about the enemy attacking you. Since each map is different and each game plays out differently, it's hard to say exactly where you should place your additional TCs. There are a few things to keep in mind though. Make sure there's enough space around them to build farms. This will not only keep the farmers safe, but will also reduce the number of extra mills that you'll need to build. If you want to build a town center on a wood line, try to build it in a way that you can get the most number of villagers efficiently chopping wood. You'll want to have as much surface area of the town center touching the wood as possible. Try to build new TCs on wood lines that don't already have a lumber camp on them. If you already have a lumber camp on a wood line, you'll end up running into efficiency issues if you also add a TC there. If you have a forward gold, make sure you build your town center in a way that crossbowmen can't shoot the villagers. This applies to forward wood lines too. If crossbowmen can still take you off a valuable resource, you may have chosen a bad TC spot. Some maps are just bad though, so you won't always get the perfect TC location. If you build a town center on gold or stone, keep in mind that you'll have way too many villagers on those resources if you keep the rally point there. Just make sure to transfer some of these villagers to farms, or set the rally point to a nearby wood line at some point. Sometimes you'll want to delay your additional town centers just in case your opponent attacks you. I'll go over this more in the strategy section, but just know that it can be risky to invest all of your resources into economy and none into military. A lot of the times later in the game, you could just be reacting to the current situation rather than following a predetermined strategy. One situation that can come up is you're going for constant aggression. You have 3 town centers pumping villagers, and 3 archery ranges pumping crossbow. Your spending is great, you're always below 100 of every resource. You look to the production queue, and whoops, you have 6 crossbowmen queued in each range. What's happened here is that your economy was built for what you were doing at the beginning of the attack, and you were too busy microing your units to add military production building to match your growing economy. This comes back to always having a plan for your wood that's coming in. In this situation, you should cancel all extra crossbowmen in all of your ranges and spend the resources elsewhere. If your opponent has cavalry, make 3 more barracks and 10 more farms for pikemen. If your attack isn't doing much, maybe add more farms and go to stone and then get to Imperial Age for trebuchets. If you don't actually use your resources effectively, then your economy might as well have been how it was when you started your attack. Well, not exactly, since it's still better to float resources than to not have them at all, but primarily you actually want to spend all the resources that are coming in. This is the basis of macro, increasing the number of resources that are coming in while also increasing spending at the same rate. In the next part, I'll talk about strategy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you there. Welcome to the discussion of strategy. We'll be going through a bunch of different concepts that will allow you to make better strategic choices due to having greater knowledge of the game, as well as being able to adapt to the current state of the game. I call it a discussion because unlike the objectiveness of macro, strategy is much more subjective. For example, getting housed is 100% always bad, whereas choosing how many spearmen to build to defend against a scout rush is more of a preference. Specific situations like this depend on a lot of different factors, and getting into each and every factor for every strategic decision would go way beyond the scope of this video. Instead of focusing on individual situations, I'll be primarily going over how to collect and process information so that you may come up with an answer yourself. Strategy is something that takes a long time to get good at because it relies heavily on your game knowledge, which builds up slowly as you work your way through a near infinite number of situations. Do you know when to fight skirmishers with your archers, or when to fight a medium-sized ball of crossbowmen with your knights? These are the types of decisions you can only make with a lot of experience. First, let's split strategy into two groups, preparation and reaction. Strategies that you prepare are thought of before the game starts, and strategies that you react with are thought of while you're playing the game. It's important to build towards a plan from the start of the game, but it's also important to adapt your plan as the game progresses. Examples of prepared strategies are going for men-at-arms tower rush, archers versus Teutons, and collecting relics in arena. All of these ideas are planned out before the game starts. For men-at-arms towers, you're probably following a build order. For archers versus Teutons, you know that Teutons don't have great options for dealing with archers throughout the game. And for collecting relics on Arena, you understand that relics are very important if the game goes late, which it often does on Arena. Examples of reactive decisions are switching to skirmishers when seeing archers, after taking a good fight placing a forward castle, and getting a siege workshop to stop a siege push. None of these reactive decisions were made before the game started. They were just choices you made based on the current state of the game. You'll notice that each example I gave in both categories are not always going to be the correct decision. You may have to change your plan based on what you see, or just come up with a completely different approach. It's rare that there's a 100% correct answer to what you're seeing. Usually there are just varying degrees of goodness or badness. When choosing a strategy, it can be important to factor in predictability. Your opponent can make predictions of what you'll do based on the information they get, so you have to be careful of what you reveal to them. You can use this to your advantage, though. Imagine you pick Franks. You get to Feudal Age on 19 pop to do a quick scout rush. Your opponent sees your stable being built, but loses a scout shortly after, since you got the speed and attack bonus on your scout from the quick age up. At this point, your opponent should be 100% sure that you'll go for scouts, so his reaction might be to finish walling his base and get some spears, but there's no way for him to verify what you're doing at this point since he lost his scout. You could completely change your strategy at this point to men-at-arms towers or archers, which would catch him completely off guard. The point is, the most optimal strategy is not always the best strategy. That said, the reason that certain strategies are common is that they're good. Don't try to be too sneaky and always select suboptimal strategies. So, with that out of the way, let's get into it. One very important thing that informs your strategy choice is the civilization matchup. You need to know what each civ is capable of before you decide what units to go for. For example, you'd probably never tech into halberdiers if your opponent's one of the Mesoamerican civs, since none of them get stable units, which is the main reason to build them. Learning the tech trees and understanding what each civ will likely go for just takes a lot of experience. You can gain this experience by playing random civs so that you learn what some of the less commonly selected civs are able to do. It's important to keep in mind that just because a civ isn't great for doing a certain strategy, it doesn't mean that they can't do it. It just means that they're less likely to do it. This is one of the reasons scouting is so important, which we'll get into later. What are some of the common things to look out for when understanding the civ matchup? Something to keep in mind is, if your opponent has a better version of a unit, you might not want to commit too much into that unit. For example, if he's Ethiopians and you're Persians, you don't want to be building too many crossbowmen, since Ethiopian crossbowmen fire faster. If your army can be countered by the same units from your enemy, you've probably selected a bad unit composition for this game. If your plan is to boom in Castle Age, you'll want to think of your civilization's ultimate composition and work towards it. Since you'll be trying to take the game late, your opponent might try to push you early. The units you choose to defend with can influence how smooth your transition to Imp is. Let's look at a situation.
We are without a leader. The dead king of...
Sun Tzu teaches us not only how to engage our enemies. As you are growing your civilization, it's important to begin in the right manner. A thriving early economy will allow you to reach the feudal age in a strong position, from which you can continue to grow and ably battle your opponent. We'll start.
We are without.